dive into motivation. Or maybe more accurately, that feeling when it decides to take a hike. Ever feel like you're stuck in a mental spin cycle, like that finish line just keeps scooting further away?
Oh, I hear you. It's way more common than people think.
Really?
Yeah, we tend to think of motivation like some kind of superpower. You either got it or you don't. But honestly, it's more about strategy, figuring out what makes you tick.
Okay, so less about magic, more about method.
Yeah?
I can work with that. It's like that Zig Ziglar quote makes me think about showering, actually.
Oh, how so?
Well, you don't hop out the shower and expect to stay sparkling clean forever,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And motivation's kind of the same way. Remember that fresh out the shower feeling? That
Yeah.
initial burst of get up and go?
Oh, yeah. Fleeting, isn't it?
It is. And just like you wouldn't skip showering for a week and expect to feel amazing, relying only on those fleeting bursts of motivation, well, it's a recipe for feeling stuck.
Makes sense. If I only relied on those initial bursts of excitement to power through a big project at work, I'd be in trouble.
Right. It's no wonder those New Year's resolutions have such a, shall we say, optimistic track record.
So true. Tons of hype in January, but come February, life happens. Okay, so we need strategies, ways to keep that momentum going when the shiny newness wears off. Which brings us to the infamous shiny object syndrome, am I right?
Ah, yes, SOS, the nemesis of anyone with big dreams.
Tell me about it. My brain has a gift for finding distractions. It's uncanny.
It's that feeling of being pulled in a million directions all at once, the allure of the new. We're wired for that. Curiosity is natural. But then it gets amplified by things like FOMO, fear of missing out. Like there's always something better just around the corner.
FOMO is real, that little voice whispering, don't miss out on the next big thing. So how do we quiet that voice? How do we stay focused when everything's vying for our attention?
It all starts with awareness. Next time you feel yourself getting pulled towards something shiny and new, listener name, hit pause for a second. Ask yourself, does this really fit with my goals right now? Or is this just FOMO taking the wheel?
That pause, that's the trick, isn't it? Otherwise, I end up with a whole bunch of projects half finished. It's like my enthusiasm is writing checks my follow-through can't cash.
And that's SOS in a nutshell. That gap between the initial excitement and actually seeing something through to the end. Think about it. How many times have you been sucked in by some online course promises you the moon, right? Or a new business idea that just fizzles out?
Oh, constantly. Especially when it's marketed really well. My brain's like, problem solved, this is it. And then reality sets in.
Because real progress,
Yeah.
that takes time,
Yeah.
effort, consistency.
Yeah.
Not always as exciting as that initial, ooh, shiny dopamine rush, right?
Right.
But here's the good news.
Yeah.
You can actually train yourself to be a little more discerning, to really check out those new opportunities before diving in head first.
Okay, so how do we do that? How do we separate the real deal from the distractions?
Remember that clear vision, the strategy we were talking about? Before you jump on something new, anything, ask yourself, does this actually fit into my goals, my plans? Or is this like a detour, a side trip? And if it's not a resounding yes, jot it down somewhere. A notebook, your phone, whatever. Call it your parking lot for ideas.
Love that. A parking lot for my brain.
That way you're acknowledging it,
Yeah.
but not letting it derail your momentum.
So we talked about what happens when there's too much, right? Too many distractions. But what about the flip side? When you're stuck, not because you're chasing new things, but because you doubt yourself, doubt your ability to do anything at all.
The fixed mindset trap. It's that belief that we are what we are, that our abilities are fixed.
Like you can't learn new tricks.
Exactly. You're either good at something or you're not. And it can be so limiting. I mean, if you don't believe you can improve, why bother trying, right? Suddenly, every challenge is proof of your limitations, not an opportunity to grow.
Like slamming on the brakes instead of hitting the gas. But the result's the same. You're not moving forward.
Exactly. And it can show up in how people deal with feedback, too. Someone with that fixed mindset, they might see constructive criticism as a personal attack instead of, valuable information to help them improve, or they get caught up comparing themselves to others, either feeling inadequate or they cling to this false sense of superiority, and it stops them from learning and growing.
Sounds like a recipe for getting stuck. So how do we get unstuck? How do we shift out of that fixed mindset to something more, empowering? Because it's not about magically becoming good at everything, right?
You got it. It's about cultivating a growth mindset. The belief that our abilities, they're malleable, You can learn and grow. It takes effort, practice. It's not about some inborn talent. It's about embracing the journey, getting better.
Okay, I like the sound of that journey, but how? What are some practical steps to shift from like fixed to growth?
Start by just noticing those fixed mindset thoughts when they pop up. Instead of, ooh, I'm terrible at this, try I'm still learning. It's a tiny shift in language, but it can make a huge difference.
From I can't do this to I can't do this yet.
Exactly. That yet is powerful. It opens up possibility. Reminds us we're all works in progress, right?
Right.
Another thing, focus on the effort you're putting in, not just the outcome. Because honestly, those struggles, those moments when you feel like you're pushing your limits, that's where the real growth happens.
So that's not about being a natural. It's about putting in the work and celebrating the small victories along the way. Because let's face it, staying focused on those long-term goals, it's tough. Building a business, learning something new, even just trying to be a better version of ourselves, it's a lot.
It is, and distractions are everywhere.
Yeah.
Which is why having that clear vision, a strategy, it's so important. It's about asking yourself, does this goal actually excite me? Does it line up with my values? And if it does, what's one step, one concrete thing I can do today to move a little closer?
So being intentional, not just getting swept up in every little thing that pops up. Do you have any strategies that work for you personally? I'm always looking for tips. It's about making choices instead of like reacting to every notification and every tweet. But
Right.
that's easier said than done some days, right?
Oh, absolutely. And those distractions, they often tap into something deeper, don't they? Stress, maybe.
Yeah.
Or boredom, that feeling of, oh, my to-do list is going to eat me alive.
Don't even get me started.
We tend to think about productivity as this like time management thing,
Mm-hmm.
but our emotions, they play a huge role.
Oh, for sure.
Think about it. How many times have you put off a task, not because you didn't have time, but just because?
All the time.
Overwhelmed,
You're-
anxious,
Yeah.
blah, blah.
Especially with those big, scary tasks. Avoidance is my superpower, I swear.
Right. That's where those mindfulness practices we mentioned earlier, they can be so helpful, not just for stress, but for understanding your own like internal landscape.
Okay, I'm listening.
So when you get more aware of your thoughts, your feelings, what's happening in your body, you start to see those triggers before they derail you. And then you can choose a different path.
So instead of mainlining coffee or disappearing down a social media rabbit hole when I'm stressed,
Exactly.
I can hit pause, take a breath, figure out what I actually need in that moment.
Maybe it also is another cup of coffee.
Yeah.
Or maybe you need to walk around the block. Quick meditation break.
Mhm.
5 minutes of quiet. It's about finding what works for you, what helps you reset.
Being proactive, not reactive, because the distractions, they're not going anywhere. Probably just going to get worse, if I'm being honest.
You're right. Which is why building that resilience, that ability to ride the waves,
Mhm.
With a little more grace, a little more kindness towards yourself.
Instead of beating ourselves up for not being perfect.
Yes, that's the key.
But there are so many strategies out there, so many different techniques. Kind of overwhelming, to be honest.
I hear you. It's a lot. But if you had to pick just one thing to really focus on that would have the biggest impact,
Yeah.
I'd say cultivate self-awareness.
Interesting. Not some fancy productivity hack or a rigid schedule.
Those can be great tools, but they work best when they're tailored to you, to your energy, your
Oh.
tendencies. And that means taking the time to really get to know yourself.
Our strengths, our weaknesses, what makes us tick.
What drains you, what triggers those, ooh, shiny impulses. It's like becoming your own best friend.
Because once we understand why we do the things we do, the how-tos almost decide the point, right?
Exactly. We start to see those patterns, those habits. We see where we might be holding ourselves back,
Yeah.
limiting beliefs, unrealistic expectations, even just not taking care of ourselves.
This has been such a great conversation, really eye-opening. I think the biggest takeaway for me is it's not just about the destination.
It's about the journey.
Exactly. Learning, growing, becoming, and being kind to ourselves along the way.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So, to everyone listening, take some time to check in with yourself. Get curious about those patterns, those things that motivate you, and approach your goals with kindness and a belief in yourself.
You got this.
On that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive. Until next time, happy exploring, everyone.